This is Zaria Baxter. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Making HR Easy, where you can get useful tips on how to properly manage your staff and make your organization more effective. We're going to talk about a very important topic, and that is crisis management. It was once said, we are never too far away from a crisis, as there is no crisis-free zone on this universe. Let us get straight into it. I want to introduce you to my P squared E squared formula. Prepare, plan, execute, and evaluate. This formula is by no means exhaustive, but it should set the foundation for a sound crisis management response.
When and how a crisis will occur is anyone's guess, but one thing is for certain, all organizations are susceptible. The nature of a crisis varies with the type of organization and ranges from infectious disease health threats, fire, digital security failure, technical accidents, power outages, criminal actions, and even low employee morale. The nature of the organization's response to the crisis makes all the difference as it relates to the extent of injuries, loss of lives, or damage to the image of the organization. We will use this session to go through the P squared E squared formula, which will set a solid base from which a strategic crisis management plan can be formulated. But first, we will define what a crisis is and discuss the need for a crisis management plan in detail. I am drawn to Coombs' definition of what a crisis is. He aptly noted that it is an unpredictable event that threatens the important expectancies of stakeholders, as well as seriously impact the organization's performance, resulting in negative outcomes. And more simply put, a crisis threatens operations within an organization and can have negative consequences if it is not handled properly, and we don't want that. Unprepared is what you don't want your company to be when it comes to a crisis. Yes, it is true, no one can predict the nature or time of a crisis, but carefully planned preparation for specific crises based on the nature of your organization can certainly help to mitigate the risks and therefore restore normality. The health of staff and clients are of utmost importance, and having a sound crisis management plan is an ideal way to express that. How a crisis is handled also bears on the image of the organization, and of course, having reference modules such as action plans on how to handle different types of threats to the organization increases flexibility and speed of response. Your crisis management plan also helps you to pull together the right resources needed to respond to threats, as well as provide a source from which valuable lessons can be drawn to prevent certain risks from resurfacing in the future. Here we are at the P squared E squared formula. What it entails is that you prepare, you plan, you execute, and evaluate. When you're establishing your crisis management plan, we will discuss each of these tasks in detail. Understanding your organization means doing your SWOT. Understand your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and threats at this phase. It is best to deliberately select members of your crisis management team based on their knowledge base and skill sets. Different types of crisis will of course require different know-how from your team members. You should have a representative from the different units or departments of your organization on your crisis management team. The different crises to be addressed should be discussed, as well as the resources that will be needed to effectively manage same. For different types of crisis, different training is required. Carefully identify the training needs of your crisis management team. Once you have identified the types of crises that your document will seek to address. This may sound pretty self-explanatory, but it is also the responsibility of the team leader to clearly communicate the role of each member of the crisis management team. The logistics in your crisis management plan is very important. In the event of an evacuation, persons need to know where to go. If there's an isolation or even medical containment, that has to be clearly established in your plan as well. Now, this might sound like a given, but it is worth emphasizing. Everyone on your crisis management team need to know their role and how to access the resources that they need. Response to crisis situations are normally more successful when there's a centralized authority. Establishing a clear chain of command is definitely advantageous. Effective communication is key. The right communication channels will help you to reach people on the inside and outside of your organization who you need to touch base with in times of a crisis. You can utilize SMS for blast messaging, public announcement systems, but blend the type of communication channels that you use because you don't want to rely too heavily on sources that utilize electricity or the web. You should compose your messages in advance. When drafting crisis management plans, make sure to include action plans that will seek to address different types of crises and who does what in response to which crisis. I know this might sound cliche and it's easier said than done, but don't panic. Panic only serves to create confusion and delay response. The completion of planning signifies that half of the work has been completed. When you're down to the execution phase, this is a stage where the plans are put to the test. When matters have been determined to reach a crisis level, communicate the threat to your response team responsibly and be ready to release the necessary resources that they need. When managing crisis, it's most important to select the relevant crisis response action plan to respond most effectively to the crisis at hand. Bear in mind that a crisis plan is not a blueprint, but a reference tool which will guide how you respond to a particular threat. Even if your organization does not experience a crisis just yet, it does not mean that you should not put your crisis management plan to the test. Conduct sporadic rehearsals. Train your crisis management response team to increase readiness. Your evaluation process is so important. In the event of a real crisis, or even during your dry run sessions, make note of what went well and what did not go well. Draft up measures on how to address these gaps. The reality is that we live in a fast-paced world that is becoming increasingly interconnected, and so are our threats and risks. It is important that the training of your response teams are current. Your crisis management document should also be frequently reviewed and updated accordingly, bearing in mind the contact details of those on your team. We have come to the end of our session on the P-squared, E-squared approach to strategic crisis management. If you have found the video useful, please go ahead and click the like button. For more interesting videos on human resource management, feel free to subscribe. For customized training and development workshops, telephone 876-812-0500 or make contact by email to t_zaria@yahoo.com.
For your customized training and development workshops, you can always contact me at 876-812-0500. You can also contact me via email at T_ZARIAS1@yahoo.com. See you then.